I might do this one in a British accent.
Ooh, okay. Really appealing to our UK crowd that we've been, talking to lately on the client side.
Hey,
if that was it, please don't. please cut right there.
We're gonna do some agent. It's not going to be easy, is it? That's pretty good, actually. I don't know what part of England it is.
No, I don't. I don't either. I mean, I feel if you would have hit it with an in it, I would have believed it a little bit more. There you go.
In it. What's that one guy that's like that beats up everybody?
Jason Statham?
Yeah. I love the way he talks.
Here's the deal.
What is the deal?
We're going to build you an AI agent. And you're going to love it in it.
And that's going to be all you're going to hear about it. Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could talk like people in the UK. It's so cool.
That is one thing I wish we would have carried over from there is kept the accent.
I just sound like a redneck implant.
Welcome to the show where air takes the flow. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dickson, and as always, I'm joined by the guy who's the best or possibly worst British accent I've ever heard, Rich Swier. How are you doing today, man?
You didn't have enough of samples. I was just was testing out some voices.
You were just riffing, and
You have to give me some. Yeah, I got to do some work. I'll be there for a couple of weeks. I'm gonna just sit there and learn.
Yeah, well, when this episode comes out, you'll just come back basically. So I expect I want to hear like a Statham locked in. I want to get maybe
maybe something more like Downton Abbey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, you're gonna be like primarily in London, so old London town. That was mine.
Wow. You actually transported me
right to the eye.
For a minute there, I thought I was.
You're in the heart of Piccadilly Circus.
I was in Charles Dickens land. Yeah.
Well, we're not doing our accent podcast today. That's a different episode we're going to be doing. But we are going to do kind of a smaller short where we're really focusing around AI agent creation and kind of getting a crash course. I think to new listeners we've kind of had come in since the last time we've done a little bit of a deeper dive into it. But really focusing around like the 5 key phases that we look at as a business. So here at Rhea, as we're deploying a lot of this, we focus on like developing blueprint, moving into training, talking about integrations, doing heavy testing with human user feedback, and then getting into that kind of final pass or tweak phase before you get it to launch. So I think let's start with developing and blueprinting and just giving maybe some of the people listening some things to keep in mind to keep a watch for when they're actually looking to build an AI agent.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, I think they understand kind of the basics of what an agent is about, right? Like if you were to think of it as just like a digital employee or an autonomous workflow, or maybe even something that might have human in the loop. But for the most part, it's an entity that goes off and does work, right? And
it's got to have agency to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the tools like ChatGPT and others are starting to kind of incorporate agentic elements to it versus, so like, we were kind of used to in the early days of ChatGPT, it felt more like a search and query where you would prompt and you get a response. And now they've evolved into allowing for more, I guess, complex, reasoning tasks where you could basically set off an agent and they could go off and do it for, 5, 10, 15 minutes, come back with the results. But then of course, when you talk about enterprise or a business and you really want to untether that from the ChatGPT experience or untethered from the desktop and actually have it go off and do other work more autonomously, then you really start to think about, okay, well, if I'm going to have it do that and I'm not going to need the human to drive the car, if you will, I need to really train the AI. So, a lot of people when they look to go deploy agents, they underestimate or they just don't know what they don't know on what it takes to train them, and then also what it takes to integrate them into their existing businesses, what it takes to test them, and then ultimately what it takes to actually launch and monitor and maintain, kind of those agents over time. Yeah. So, what we've learned as we, work with businesses is that the first step, kind of in preparing for building out your agentic workforce or even just your first agent is kind of getting your house in order and ultimately finding out where your source of truth is. And it's shocking to us, like how often that's more complicated of an ask than you would think, right? Most people would think that they have their stuff really well sorted or somewhat, organized, or at least they could point to a place where it might be located, right? Like a SharePoint or Google Drive, or a support system like Zendesk or whatever it might be. But what ends up happening is it's in a diverse, set of places, all shapes and colors, and ultimately there's work to be done in curating and collecting that and converting it and being ready for an agent. So, the best practices that we've typically engaged with is, first and foremost is trying to figure out, okay, where's your best source of truth, right? Because source of truth is even somewhat of a gray area for a lot of companies. And you want to tie the ones that actually are going to be updated on a day-to-day basis. You're going to want to tie into that direct, and you're going to want to have a real-time connection that consistently updates the AI, which is a whole nother, it's kind of a pipeline, if you will. And then the stuff that's more static, like documents and other things that may not change that often, you're going to have to bring into a folder and start converting those into, Markdown or JSON or whatever format that will be easier to push into your agent's memory, right? The vector store. So, this step is actually what takes quite a bit of time. And I think another reason why most solutions out there that you see kind of skip this step. They don't really kind of entertain the idea that you're going to train this agent on more than just maybe a single document or a website or an FAQ. So, what we find is when we typically go up against a lot of the providers out there that are either that are focused on support AI solutions, or even just the existing SaaS companies that are just having embedded AI or AI add-ons, they don't really allow you to do much as far as the training goes, right? They'll say, oh, you want to build an AI agent? Okay, just here's some, upload an FAQ document, and you can only upload like 5 documents or 10 documents, or, when we're building out agents, we're uploading gigabytes of data, right? We're uploading, massive files, thousands of support tickets, hundreds of thousands of tickets, thousands of knowledge base articles, millions of lines of code, or whatever it might be. We're trying to get as much information into AI so we can actually have high efficacy. But a lot of these other solutions that are out there, really limit your ability to train the AI. So that's also another kind of like check box that you should be adding to your list of must-haves when you review and when you go out and look at solutions. Make sure that you're able to not only, really create and train your AI with a high volume of data, but they allow you to do that. And obviously you're going to want to be able to take it with you if you cancel or if you leave the service. So that's like step number one, and it's a big one.
That one I feel like gets overlooked either by people feeling that, I just don't have my data together. And that might be the case, but it's always too that, let me just dump a bunch of stuff here, and then it's just that easy, right? It's plug and play. It's like, well, there's a taxonomy that takes place. So you have to kind of, put things in boxes so AI understands what's there.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear this this interesting comment we always hear sometimes, and maybe on social media more than anywhere else. Yeah. It's somebody who tries to deploy an AI agent and tries to train and tries to launch something like a support agent or a knowledge base agent or something like that. You'll see some people like, oh, it didn't work, or it didn't know the answer, or hallucinated, and what the reality is, like, all that is due to one single reason. It's just poor training, right? Like, if you're not training the AI well, if you brought in data in a horribly formatted way, or it wasn't, like you said, you didn't create like a really strong taxonomy or a knowledge graph, or you didn't really understand how to better format it, or you just kind of threw garbage into the AI, then you're expecting low value out, and then they blame AI, or they blame the general concept of AI, and it's just not true, right? I mean, when it's well trained and the content is very well formatted, AI does a great job of understanding high volumes of data, obviously, because that's the core science behind LLM.
So you get in.
Yeah, it's just a big red flag.
Exactly. You get in there, you're able to kind of see the forest, the trees, understand what you're trying to build with this from that blueprint. So you're giving it the right information. Then we get into the training aspect, which is now helping it understand the context of why this matters, right, into the role that it's about to take on.
Yeah, I mean, when you upload all this information, you put as much information in a well-formed fashion into your AI, then you obviously then need to go toward, testing, right? Human feedback, and really starting to dial in and try to, for lack of better words, just kind of break it, right? And, trick it, try to find ways that you can kind of manipulate it. Although that's maybe not necessarily the status quo of how it'll be used. It's always nice to see where it starts to, the answers start to kind of fade in value. But we also, one of the things that we do quite a bit, or all the time, is we do backtesting. So, just like the old days of machine learning, you want to go back, if it's a support agent, for example, you're going to want to go back and run a simulation of the past, 1,000 tickets or 10,000 tickets. And the idea of, using past tickets is that's probably the best predictor of what future tickets are going to look like. And then you want to run an analysis of saying, hey, if I do launch this agent with this training, how well is it going to do with the last, if this existed 6 months ago, how well is it going to do in answering the last 6 months of tickets? And that's a great barometer, a great measurement of expected results. A lot of people go, oh, I don't really know how many tickets is it going to solve? How many questions can it answer? The best way to know is to actually test it against real input, real data. And that's also where you'll discover gaps in your training. That'll also be where you discover areas where the training might have issues, right? And then it's just kind of an iterative process. So you kind of live in that training and testing loop, for a period of time until you feel like you have a pretty solid, 90, 95, 98% efficacy. Realizing though, when you go live with that agent and more people use it, you're going to still continue it will still continue to be trained on real data. So it's just like an employee. We've used this analogy.
It's shadowing the person and making sure that it knows a little bit about what's going on there, and you're giving it feedback to help improve on its job.
Yeah, training never ends, right? I mean, the things change, right? Like
new documents come out, you have a new version. You're supporting a new product in your retail shop, whatever it is. Like, there's always something else to add.
That's another big check mark in the things you should know, kind of, one to grow on kind of thing is, is that people kind of go into building these agents without a platform and without really infrastructure that can scale. And, because it's easy to get into, it's easy to throw up a prototype and go, oh, look how, it is very cool to see AI in operating. But then you fast forward 6 months and you're like, oh man, I didn't realize we have to update the training so often. Oh, I didn't realize that we have to have tools that provide an easy way to do human feedback and testing, because every time you upload a new document, you kind of have to do some iterative testing, right? It's like software. When you upload your new code in your software, you probably want to do a little QA and testing.
Are you sure, Rich? You don't just push? You don't just push it and say, hope for the best?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do, but other people should not. But yeah, I mean, I think, people don't understand that, especially if it's an agent that's outwardly facing, right? Customer facing, you don't want it to, when you upload the new training, you don't want to get something completely wrong. Now, it's not the end of the world, but
no, humans make mistakes too. But avoid. You're trying to do this so that way you're comfortable enough knowing that at a macro level there might be someone that does need a human and it can get escalated, but that you're not putting something out there that you don't feel would be at least as good as a live human to be answering whatever it has on it. So we've got development blueprint, you got the training piece. We've kind of tiptoed around because training and testing somewhat go hand in hand because it's kind of the loop that happens there. But in between that loop is your favorite thing, which is typically integrations. All of the integrations out there. With our best friends at Salesforce, we're now doing a lot of stuff with Freshdesk.
All the easy ones.
Yeah, exactly.
ServiceNow is the new one that I hate.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, yeah. Oh my God, what a dumpster fire that product is. Oh my God.
Oh man.
Anyway, yeah. It's
they're all great with an asterisk.
Yeah. So yeah, integration is obviously they're a requirement just to keep obviously things in sync. So every company has their choice of different SaaS products. So usually what we do when we build out an agent is that there's obviously APIs, which are just programmatic interfaces to these different third parties. It might be that we pull data from it, like we might pull knowledge base articles or tickets, and that would be the ongoing training of the AI agent. Or we might push stuff. We might create a ticket or create an article or create a lead or whatever it might be into the system. So it's a bi-directional integration that you want to have with your kind of what I would call your systems of record or your core solutions. And we do obviously with our agents. I mean, they integrate with everything, right? Everything from Google Workspace to Jira to, you name it. So, integration is one of those areas where you can really empower an agent to do a lot. And especially when you're talking about autonomy and an automated workflow where you can have an agent have some sort of input, a trigger or some sort of, hey, do this. And then it goes through a series of steps that can update and grab information from your systems and ultimately leverage AI to make certain decisions. And then ultimately have an output that, might have taken one or more humans, hours or days to do. Now, are you doing it minutes? So, integration is definitely where you have to have a system of record. You have to have somewhere where your information is, but it is a little bit of a pain in the ass. So, it's another check mark to put on the board of why most AI agent deployments either fail you to launch or they just fail because, again,
that integration piece.
Most of these things that you see off the shelf don't talk about integration or training. Like if you go and buy, the AI agent, quote unquote, that's they sell inside of Zendesk. I'll pick on them for a second. It's just basically they took an open source model and they strap it against their search query against their database, which may or may not be in good shape, and that's it. That's the limit of it. So it's not really an AI agent that's going to handle all your support or be trained on everything within your business. It's going to be trained on whatever limited information is inside of your Zendesk. And, that's great. I mean, maybe your knowledge base is pretty good but it just ends up being kind of just an enhanced search, right? It's not really truly agentic because it's still locked, in the jail cell of that SaaS.
Yep.
You can't unleash it. You can't let it free and have it go do autonomous. It might support a chatbot experience, but that's about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a huge difference between, having an agent that can integrate with everything and be trained on everything and have no limitations around those two components for you to really, really, really get the biggest return on your investment with an agent. If you're looking at an agent and it's limited on what you can train and limited on what you can integrate with, then you're really you're basically just building it's just a plug-in. Yeah. It's not going to be autonomous. It's not going to really, it might add value, don't get me wrong, but not to the extent that an autonomous free walking, free range agent. That's I'm going to go ahead and trademark
free range agent.
Free range agent. Yeah, I'm free range. Are these agents free range?
They are actually.
So yeah, exactly like chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's that is definitely another big red flag to look out for when you're choosing or building out agents and choosing a vendor to partner with, is that ask them the hard questions about training, about testing. Do they have tools that allow you to do that? Do they have capability of uploading gigabytes of data to train? And are they able to integrate? Not just integrate in the sense of like, oh yeah, we pull this in. I'm talking about two-way, bidirectional, completely flexible, customizable workflows, because you're going to have your own way of doing things. And if you're not able to do your if-thens and if this happens, that happens, and you're not be able to integrate it in your existing business, then you're going to, it's not going to do what you want it to do. And it's not going to give you the huge benefit.
Absolutely. So I mean, now
these are great things to think about when deploying.
Yeah. And so in the perfect world, you've gotten through all of this, taken, 60, 90 days, maybe at this point, to kind of really feel like you've got a stronghold. And from a testing perspective, you feel like everything is right at the finish line there. What do you feel like is maybe, and we'll kind of wrap up on this, what should be on your mind in that final pass before launch? It shouldn't just be, going down a checklist maybe and just doing all of those things, but is there any kind of feedback you would have as far as the last push or the last adjustment? Because also too, there is this kind of analysis paralysis where you want everything to be perfect and you've done all this work and it's there and you should just get it out there. But at the same time, I think we've always talked about the control piece. It's kind of hard to let the bird leave the nest when you're not really sure if this is your first time ever doing something, if it's going to be successful. So what's maybe one little piece that you can kind of put in there to button it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important component to think about prior to launch is, once you've gone through testing, once you've gone through, feel probably pretty confident. Internal testing obviously is something that we obviously preach. It's okay to fail inwardly because that's part of any product. But to expose it to customers or have it externally facing, you'd want to monitor it. So another big checkbox to put onto your wish list for your AI agent is having some form of human in the loop, because, in those early days, I think it's important to not only test internally, but once you launch it externally, to have somebody monitoring it. And that would be no different than what you do today. It's just that instead of them actually taking over the chat every single time, they're just monitoring what's going on, and they're kind of, if they need to take over, they can become the human in the loop. And then having some sort of system, a QA system that looks at, and AI can be a great use for this. You can actually, have AI do this, but basically every conversation should be scored. There should be a sentiment analysis. There should be some sort of evaluation,
summary,
and tracking of that, and making sure that at the end of the week or end of the month, you can say, we had 1,000 conversations and AI did this and they were scored here, and we had a couple of outliers that were scored low, and let's go see what happened, and let's, finish the training or enhance the training to avoid that in the future.
Yeah.
But it's a different, I think it's more about embracing that an AI first mentality and a human in the loop mentality. Not a lot of people think that way. They're uncomfortable delegating to another human, much less AI.
Sure.
But once they see it in action, I think it becomes very clear that AI is much better on all elements as far as that you want to, as far as conversationally, especially if it's well trained on doing a lot of the work that, quite honestly, most humans don't want to do. So I think that's a big step, having a QA process. And I think that's an important thing that's typically not even part of a non-AI business process, which is funny. We always talk about how AI is held at a higher standard, and it's partially because you're able to see everything it says, and you can't see what everything your employees say. But I'm sure that if you saw everything your employees say, you would probably be
want
like,
to hold
man,
a couple trainings.
AI might be doing a much better job than what you think. But yeah, and then finally, I think we always talk about this as far as the first use case. You always want to start with something that you feel like you have a lot of obviously pain, that the need for it is so great that it pushes you over the edge, right? I would never start with something that with nice to have. I would try to start with something that must have kind of use case, so that it does give you that momentum of saying, hey, this is, we got to go live with this.
Yeah. And in that stage honestly, too, is like, that's where all these KPIs kind of come back. If it is a pain point, right, now you have something you can directly look at. If it's a nice to have, or, it'd be cool if we could do X, like, you've now spent all that time, and like, you really don't have anything you can pinpoint and say, like, that's how it helped us do these things.
Yeah. And everything that you do, there should be somebody who's in command or managing and responsible for that AI. You always want to set a deadline. These are classic project management tips, but essentially ownership and accountability and a timeline should all be decided, at the beginning, right? So like in our cases, we usually put a 100-day timeline on a relatively complicated agent, and we identify who the owner, who the person is responsible with our customer side, so that we have a point of contact that we can push for, and we set a deadline and we set expectations, and that way you kind of stay true to okay, this is the launch date, unless something else happens that's outside of our control. I think those are just common sense kind of things. And then finally, it's obviously self-serving to say it, but I mean, I do think this is more complicated than people realize. We've been doing this for years. Yeah. If you don't count machine learning, we've almost been doing it for decades, but it's more complicated than what you think. I think the danger of AI is it's a very easy, slick proof of concept. I could generate something with AI that's a proof of concept. I could generate anything, in a matter of hours, that I could show to a boss and be like, and they could go, oh my God, this is amazing. Okay, so we don't need anybody. You got this thing under control. But the reality is like, there is a lot of complexity, a lot of learnings that very few people have gone through, because it's such a new technology, and the ground is moving so fast, and the world is moving so fast that, if you are, embarking on building out agentic AI, then you got to find a strong partner, at a minimum for at least the first couple of projects, and then as you get more confident in the process that we just described.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, for everyone listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which we linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
It takes the flow. Leah Rich on the mic, ready to explode.